To expand on our Glasstress Boca Raton 2021 exhibition, we are thrilled to be joined today by Susie Silbert. Susie is the curator of post-war and contemporary glass at the Corning Museum of Glass. Trained in glassworking and design history, she is motivated by the complex and intertwined histories of material making and makers in all media. Susie serves as the editor of New Glass Review, an exhibition in print designed to provide a snapshot of global glassworking on an annual basis. She selects the recipient of the Corning Museum's annual Ray Cow Commission and serves on the committee for the Specialty Glass Residency. She is the curator of New Glass Now, an exhibition of more than 100 artists that will travel to the Smithsonian Museum's Renwick Gallery in the fall of this year. Susie has been an independent curator, working across disciplines, as well as a lecturer on the history of glass at the Rhode Island School of Design. She has curated exhibitions at the Kansas City Art Institute, Parsons, the New School for Design, Urban Glass, and Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. Susie holds an MA in Decorative Arts, Design History, and Material Culture from the Bard Graduate Center. Please welcome Susie Silbert.
Hi, everybody. I am so happy to be here. And, we're in webinar land, so I can't actually see that you're here or how many of you there are, but I just imagine that it's huge, full audiences. And it is my absolute and complete pleasure in this winter up north winter day to be at least virtually with you in Boca talking about this exhibition, Glasstress, and about contemporary glass more broadly. And so thank you to the Boca Museum and also thank you to all of you that are tuning in. It is so nice that you chose to spend your day with me and with glass. So without further ado, some sharing. So this is where I am. This is not what it looks like right now because, like I said, I'm in upstate New York and it is a wintry winter time, although it's bright and sunny. But this is the museum's Contemporary Art and Design Wing. And here it is again, another aspirational image of summertime looking at this Contemporary Art and Design Wing, which was opened in 2015 to be a literal palace to contemporary glass. It has 26,000 square feet of contemporary space, and it's designed to show, and the museum's designed to show, the breadth of glass in all of its forms, really in a non-hierarchical way. So here you get another look into the galleries. But where I'm actually literally standing is under this building, which was opened in 1980, designed by the Latvian-American architect Gunnar Burkhardt. And it holds, and I should say also, this building, all of these buildings are on Haudenosaunee land, and we are glad to be here, occupying that space, I guess. This building, the Gunnar Burkhardt's building, holds the history of glass from the beginning of glass time, 35 centuries ago, to about 1975. And so I am talking to you from literally right underneath the whole weight of history of glass. And so I bring that up to tell you, that even though we are talking about contemporary space, we're talking about this space. I am showing you just a very little bit of what glass is and what it's about and what it could be. And even within that, the frame from which I'm speaking to is just a partial frame. So I'm giving you some ways to think about contemporary glass, but know that this is just like scratching the very beginning surface of what there is and what there could be. So, all right, with that kind of preamble, now that you know where I'm located in space, we'll start. You might not be able to see this. Tell you what, my husband, he said, black on black, what are you doing? You're crazy. But I saw that really great intro image that the Boca Raton Museum made for my talk and for leading up into it. And I was like, well, I have to do something very cool. So this talk, transparent, translucent, opaque, those ideas are going to frame how I'm speaking to you about glass today. So the first is transparent. An impartial transparency is a dream we tell ourselves. Your windows Subtitle, Your Windows Are Lying to You. So I bring you, this first image is by Kirsty Ray, an artist from Australia, an Australian artist who works in a lot of different ways. She works in slump glass, but these images, which were in the exhibition New Glass Now, are really about the way that our windows that we see in front of us, we think of our windows as super passive. We just look out them, they show us what we want to see. They don't tell us anything. But what I am telling you today is your windows are always telling you things. And in these pieces that look like they're photoshopped images, photographs, then printed on glass are actually just photographs themselves through glass, looking out through Kirsty's window, and the areas that seem like they might be edited in, like that cloud-like form that looks like it's cutting through mountains on the image on the left, or that layered, the layered foliage on the right. That is actually exactly what the camera was seeing, the glass was seeing. And so I guess I'm telling you to draw your attention to the way that transparency layers upon itself, the way that what we see is framed by so many different things. And these pieces by Nick Fruin, these high RI bottle, high reflective index bottles. These pieces are all clear glass, and yet you see that you can see a pattern in each of them because they take light in, they reflect. They process light, the reflective index is different, and they show you, that all transparencies are not created equally. Transparencies morph, they distort, they frame, they give a sense of where we are. They're always lending their influence. I think about that a lot. In particular, I didn't really highlight in those galleries, but our museum gets many visitors, and very many visitors that for whom this is their first visit to a museum. And so their first visit to a museum, and it's a glass museum, means that there's just like a different approach to moving through space. And of course it is a glass museum, we want to protect things. So everything has these glass barriers. And I think a lot about how those glass barriers are not impartial. They are always layering on reflections and transparencies and all sorts of things on top. And this piece by Song Dong that was just added to the Boca Raton Museum of Art, Big Brother, Chandelier, shows that, of course, transparency lets you see things more, but it also lets you be seen. And glass has a role in surveillance. And if you look at this image closely, you'll see that on the top where there might be flowers or there might be lights in the chandelier, instead there are security cameras, and they're always watching you. They're looking at you. I think it's a pretty incredible image, that really an incredible artwork that speaks to the kind of surveillance state that we live in and could live in even more. Another artist that thinks about glass in the context of surveillance is Cherise Perlina Weston, and she thinks about surveillance and about intimacy. She thinks about Black life, and she thinks about the violence that is often inflicted upon the Black body and the precariousness. So in this piece, Black Point Perspective, or Blueprints for Worry, notes 1 of 9, or For a While, For When, For Where. The piece is made of these sheets of glass that are just stuck in between the cinder blocks. They're just holding themselves up, and they're inviting you in. If you want to come and you want to read the text that's there, this beautiful poetic text, because Cherise is an incredible writer and an incredible thinker, you have to come and approach so carefully. And the piece will break. It did break. What you see on the side is the fragments, the shards, the danger of living, and especially the danger of living in a Black body and the precariousness that unfortunately attends that for so many in this country. And, let me just interject. My friends, it is a funny thing. I haven't actually given a webinar yet where I don't see any people. So I can't see you. I'm like seeing myself. It's such a funny, position to be in. So I'm sorry if I'm hesitating a little bit. I'm used to, the audience. So I'm building in my view of the audience now. One more note on Cherise Perlina Weston. Man, is she good. she's somebody to watch. And I just gave you kind of like a bumbling view of what her artwork is about and what she's doing, but what she's doing is so much more. And she is so much more eloquent than I am. And so I encourage you all after this talk to go and watch her lecture on YouTube. Just search her name. It's she gave a talk as part of Geeks, which is the Glass Educators Exchange, which is an incredible community of educators and artists in glass, founded by Helen Lee. And she has an incredible artist talk that I encourage you all to listen to. It's only up for a month unless you join Geeks. So do that after this. Transparency is also what allows us to have this conversation today, what allows us to see each other. The fiber optic cable, which is, you know, innovated and made by Corning Incorporated, the glass company that founded the Corning Museum of Glass, but it's a separate organization, and they don't pay me extra to big up them. Transparency is what allows even this interaction. It allows for compounding of information and for so much information to flow from one place to another, like this piece, which is in Glasstress. By the way, those of you that are watching from the museum, you probably already know this, but you should go see the show, and then you should go see the show again, because one of the gifts that COVID has given us is a staged installation of this exhibition and so many other exhibitions, because the couriers couldn't come from Venice because of the virus. And so what you see is an exhibition that unfolds and that gives, then continues to give. So this piece by Yin Shu Shen, The Container of Thinking, it is an armoire with glass fronts, and it has glass inside glass vessels. Each vessel can be conceived of as a container for thoughts or a thought itself. And this, you know, this container of thinking is all of the thoughts, not just the vessels, not just the like artistic idea of the vessel as a container for memories, but actually to make each one of those vessels is to engage in a thought process, to build together, to bring together, like each idea is a paragraph, and that whole piece is a novel. Another artist that works in that way by using the transparency of glass to compile information and to give us new perspectives on things is Dustin Yellen. And this piece, which was in the exhibition New Glass Now and is now in the collection of the Corning Museum of Glass. Side note, all the images that are in the collection of the Corning Museum of Glass have CMOG and the number, so you can look them up on our website later on. This piece, which is massive, 3,000 pounds of glass, is about 27 panes of sheet glass that have been collaged with vintage magazines and with paint and with all sorts of things layered between the glass and glued together with, I don't think he'd like me to say glued, but in any case, glued together to make this one massive block that's then carved. And the piece stands in the gallery and it gives you this whole conception. It's a whole world among worlds, and the piece is designed that way. What you see is this robot man, this watery robot man, and his idea is that you can view the world as this watery robot, and the water systems throughout hang in the balance. It is the whole world. You need everything to be in balance for the body and for the earth and for everything to stay together. So he has given us so much information in this piece, and it's a kind of piece that you can just look at and look at and look at for forever, which I encourage you to come and do or do on our website. But you can also see a piece by Dustin in the Glasstress exhibition, this piece, Sisyphus, where you can see very clearly in this one the layering of the imagery. And it's pretty incredible to think that you could take just one image. You know, on a piece of paper, you have just one image, but in glass, by layering that image, you can layer information and you can say so much at one time. And I think about the feat of making a piece like this, looking at the clouds and how wispy they seem, but to know that they're actually built up in these layers of transparency. Another artist that uses that same sort of idea of layering images, or using sheet glass, plate glass, the windows in our lives, literally the windows, to capture unseen information, is Sharon O'Mara. And in this piece, Chandelier for the End of Time, she's thinking about, she's actually capturing non-human mark making, non-human thought. That image that looks like a chandelier, that makes the chandelier form, is in fact photographs of her dog's noses, the smears that her dog's noses made on her door as they waited for she and her husband to come home. And she took all these photographs not knowing what she would do with them. But after her dogs died, she realized that she'd created this archive of experience, the archive of their relationship over time that has built up and has made this beautiful image. So in the same way, transparency can be used to bring light to things that would otherwise be unseen, like this piece, Alternative Lexicons for the Hot Shop. That's a kind of funny piece, a kind of funny feminist piece by Susie Peck and Karen Donnellan. They both teach at universities in upstate New York. Susie teaches at the Rochester Institute of Technology, and Karen Donnellan at Alfred. And they were interested in mining the sexualized and gendered language of the glass hot shop. The hot shop is where glass blowing takes place. And so the words that came down to us as glass workers in English are like kind of body. Glory hole is where you reheat the glass. You talk about jacking, it's a tool, jacks. It looks like the tool jills that they show us, and usually it's displayed the other way, but here they're presenting a different way. They're saying, what if we use different language? What if we talked about these things in different ways? What opportunities would we open for new people, for new ways of thinking? What kind of artwork would get made if we created a space with more inclusive language? If instead of talking about our blow partner, we talked about our doula. I think that's like it's a funny thing. They've given us 3 different senses of language: neutral language, feminist language, highbrow language, that we can replace these standardized American or English language glassworking names, and the neutral, feminist, highbrow, but they leave space at the bottom for expanded, for us to come up with our own language. And it's an invitation to each of us, not even if we're in glass or if we're not in glass, to think about the way that we use words and how those words create space or don't create space for people that are different from us or that have different associations. I think it's kind of a really generative piece that reminds us that the world is broad and that we can think about and inform the world that we live in. Similarly, the collective Related Tactics, which is a collective of Michelle Carlson, Weston Chirua, and Nate Watson, they made this graphic and an accompanying article that was published in our publication, New Glass Review 41, this last one. And it's an ongoing part of their work. And they have some toes in the glass world, but they are interested in the field of cultural production overall. And what they did, I think of this as a glass work. They mined the field of glass to see what is the state of representation for artists of color in this field. And they found, and in particular for Black artists, and what they found is that glass is right now very white. And from that, by making this visible, they have created an opportunity for us to rethink and open up the ways that we are experiencing and building the world of glass and all of the worlds that we operate in. And this, I think, is the kind of work that shows transparency in its very best form. The promise of transparency. The promise of transparency is that it allows us to see things and then imagine them in new ways. So, translucent. Translucence holds space, navigates between dreams and reality, and lets us experience things in different ways. So Abdul Nasser Gharem, he is a former general in the Saudi army, and also a contemporary artist, which is an interesting square to circle. and or circle the square. And his piece, the stamp Mujaz in glass on the left is in Glasstress, and it was in New Glass Now. And it's based on a piece in wood from 2013, which you see on the right. And the piece in wood the carving is based very directly on traditional Islamic carving, and it carries with it the weight of history. And in the piece, this large stamp, it comes up to my knee at least, I'm short, says in accordance with Sharia law. And in it, he was thinking about what it means to exist under the outsized influence of an institution, a bureaucracy, what it is to exist in a place where you need to get approval for every single thing that you do. It's weighty, it's heavy to exist in that place. And in wood, the piece holds the weight of history the way that I told you I am standing under the weight of history in my office beneath 35 centuries of glassworking. But I think in glass, what it does is it offers up the potential, this soft surface, this translucent surface, offers up the potential to believe in new ways, to see things, to see what the possibilities are, and to see where there might be an opportunity to shape the reality. It holds possibility, the glass does. And I think translucency overall allows us to see things differently and to question our surroundings and their permanence and veracity and work against them or shape them or work for them if we want to. It allows us agency into our world. And the artists in glass that gave us that notion most of all were Stanislav Lubensky and Jaroslava Brichtova, Czech artists, and arguably some of the most influential, maybe the most influential artists in glass of the 20th century. And they innovated the technique of mold melting or casting these large scale pieces. What it means to mold melt is it means you make a giant, a mold and you fill it with glass and you fire it. And it's something like you see in casting of other monumental things, bronze, for instance, but nobody had done that at the scale in glass, at least not in an ongoing basis and not for some time. And you can see that as they worked, they made these monumental pieces so much larger than themselves. These pieces called Imprint of an Angel. And here, what they also taught us was really about light. I mean, they were incredible innovators in glass, but what glass allowed them to do was to talk about light, that you can't suppress light, that it has a way of suffusing all that it touches. And they did this working under communist rule in Czechoslovakia for decades. The severe repression on what and how they were allowed to speak. And in fact, that's actually how they got interested in, how glass became such a vehicle. Modernism, black triangles and green squares was the language of the most interesting, of the avant-garde of the early 20th century. And a lot of artists that thought in that way, Russian constructivists and others, they were some of the people that were most interested in communism before communism became a thing. But once the communists became in power, they said, oh, get out of here, with your revolutionary ideas. These revolutionary ideas challenge us. And the communists limited anybody that worked in the traditional materials of painting and sculpture to only socialist realism, happy farmers. They weren't going to have anything that looked like this piece that you have here, that you see here in front of you. So people that were interested in modernism, people that still held those ideas could hide out in the so-called minor arts of glass and ceramics, and they could make these works that talk about how you might have a severe external form, but you can't shape what goes on inside, not fully, not wholly. And if a little bit of light comes in, it fills the whole space. No, they made these incredible pieces, these incredible works that I've been showing you, that focused on ones that could be owned by museums or by people after they made this major work, The River of Life, in the Czech Pavilion in Osaka, Japan. And this piece, which is transparent and about transparency, it was about the Prague Spring, the thawing of 1968 and the uprisings in Prague. This piece so upset the Czech government that they were not allowed to do big commissions like this anymore. And they ended up focusing back in their studio work, focusing on making works like the one I showed you, and like this incredible piece that's in the headquarters of Corning Incorporated, just across the river from where I stand. And I think what they teach us, they really are teaching us, is the power of translucence, the power of a medium. I really do think there's something incredibly powerful about filling space, about bringing light in, about letting it move. You literally can't contain it. You can't contain ideas. Translucency in that way is kind of spiritual. It takes from what is, takes us from what is to what might be. And in this piece by the Panamanian artist Isabel de Obaldia, Cocodrillos en Aguas Turbias, is about that idea. It's a metate, the form, pre-Columbian form for grinding corn, and it has two crocodile heads looking both ways. And in the pre-Columbian cultures that she draws from, the crocodile is an animal that exists in both worlds, in two worlds. It is an animal of the underworld and also of the world of this moment. And in this piece, she has hot cast glass, poured ladles of molten glass into a mold made of wet sand that she's added colored powders, and later she adds some paint on the surface, and she's poured the glass into it. And you can see those bubbles on the top are from the action of that hot casting, which is captured in the frozen material of glass and shows the turbulent waters of her title. The title in English is Crocodiles in Turbulent Waters. And it shows that kind of rupturing, that tension between the world, the movement between worlds, the world that is and the world that is to come. And I think she does it so well. Like, you can see it clearly from the top, but from the side, the glass is translucent, almost as if shielding us from the power of the full reality. Like in Judaism, how you can't say the name of God, instead you say Hashem, the name, because knowing the full name is too much, it would be overwhelming. Similarly here, the surface, the translucent surface of glass protects us from the full knowledge of moving between worlds. And finally, for translucence, I've talked to you a lot about cast glass. I mean, that stamp in the beginning was blown, but mostly blown, it had some cast work. But translucence exists in glass in all sorts of different materials. In this incredible piece by Larry Bell, the translucence is between two sheets of, this whole piece is formed from safety glass. 2 sheets of plate glass with an interlayer, a film interlayer, and in that interlayer, he has developed and chosen a kind of smoky filter that gives the glass this sense of depth. And the piece is a box with another box inside of it, a pink box inside of it. And Larry Bell, who has been working his whole career in glass, who's built his career out of bringing attention to light and space. Here, you know, in this piece, which he made just as he was turning 80s, he's turning his attention to atmosphere. And the piece is about the impermanence of fog. He has a studio in Southern California, in Venice, California, and the fog rolls in the morning and it transforms the neighborhood. And he is thinking about that transformation, about the mists of time and about the space we occupy and how we do it. And it is really, truly an unbelievable thing, this space that he has caused in the gallery. You can see the person as she stands next to it. And I can tell you from experience of being next to this thing, when you stand exactly straight on, parallel with one of the sides, you can see pretty much into that pink core inside. But when you look across a corner, it cancels itself out. It is like driving in a thick fog where you think, oh, maybe I should pull over, I can't really see. And for me, at 5'2", looking up at this piece, which is about 6 feet tall, it looks like it has a lid on it, but it doesn't have a lid on it. All that is illusion. And I think, again, that is an opportunity for us to consider and reconsider the constraints that we think we find ourselves in, and the opportunities for change that there might be and that there are. So, opaque. Opaque looks within and reflects out. show you another cube. One of my my colleagues at the museum pointed out to me that a lot of my acquisitions are squares and circles, and I thought, oh, huh, I never really thought of it that way. But then I see the connection. This one I didn't acquire, but I do like it, and it is a square. It's by another Czech artist, Marian Carroll, who's a student of Lubensky and Brichtova. And in this piece, it's opaque glass. It's also large. It's about 4.5 feet tall on all sides. And it looks like, it's the kind of piece that I think people come into a museum and they see something like that and they're like, oh my God, contemporary art, I don't understand it. Why are people even making me look at it? But it is also the reason that I think people look at contemporary art and they're like, oh, maybe there's something else here, because this piece, which you could just walk by and glance at and think that it's just a perfect cube, is actually a cube that imagines a sphere inside of it. So it's each side slightly bulges out. So just in the same way that Lubensky and Brichtova used their forms to show light and to show the way that light moved, Marian Carroll is imagining this pressure that you can try and create a form on the outside, but the pressure of what's inside of it will shift and change it, and there's always more. There's always more to see. Jitka Kolbe-Rudžičková, who's a Czech artist, also uses opaque glass in this piece to make tangible what has been lost. So what I mean by that is that the piece is called Gerda Stein. And she made this piece as she was thinking about her village in the Czech Republic, and she was thinking about the legacy of the Holocaust and all of the people that were no longer there, all the people that had been lost, all the Jewish people that used to live there, and that now all that remains of them is their clothes. And she found this dress with a name in it of Gerda Stein, and she made this piece, which is a vessel. So thinking back to that cabinet of thoughts, this is a vessel that holds, could hold, signifies the whole life, the whole world that was lost in the death of Gerda Stein, and it has a slice through it like a Jewish act of mourning, of rending the clothes, and thinking about this act of memorial and remembrance. And I think it is interesting and beautiful the way that this bright yellow glass, which is again speaking about yellow stars, can bring us to the sense of what is not there. So on the one hand, we see translucence, imagining what could be, and opacity, making concrete what could otherwise be lost. Also, let me interject here for a moment and say, you all are in South Florida, and in South Florida, the world is a different place, but I am up here in upstate New York, where it is somehow continuing to be and still winter, and it has been for all of us the long winter of pandemic. And so I realized that in this section, things got maybe a little bit heavy, and I promise you that it is not all heavy. But thinking about mirroring and thinking about the body, mirroring is so opaque. It has to be opaque. A mirror has to be opaque so that it can send light back into your eye. And it has a way of taking on a new consciousness, letting us see things in a new way. And this impeccably blown work by Nadège de Genete, a French artist who lives and works in Australia, lets us see the body in a new way. Super modernist piece, but it's carefully blown, and I do see it as a body. So the arm on the left, or I see that tall form as an arm bent slightly, the elbow bent slightly. You can see the muscles as the arm is tensed, and the round form like a breast. And I think of both of these two things, like the way that the body leans over the glass blowing bench as you are blowing glass. I think it's in that way a kind of self-portrait, or a portrait of glassworking. Also using mirroring, thinking about the body and thinking about our perceptions, as Fred Wilson, In this piece, I saw Othello's visage in his mind. Now, Fred Wilson is an incredible artist, one of the most important American artists working today. And his work is also, will be in Glasstress. So this is one to come back for. That his piece that will be in Glasstress is large and incredibly complicated and requires those couriers, but it also requires a second visit to see it. And he started working in glass. He's this American artist, an African-American artist who is always thinking about recovering and reasserting the Black presence in whatever histories he's working with and whatever place he's working with. And he started working in glass in 2003 when he got the commission to be the American artist designing the American Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. And he was thinking, okay, so what makes sense for this place, the place of Venice, and glassmaking is one of the most important things in the history of Venice. I mean, obviously biased as a glass person, and Venice is where the work in Glasstress originates. But he was thinking, what is the material that makes the most sense here? Glass does. And he was thinking about the African presence in Venice. He was looking at all these paintings. There are so many Renaissance paintings with Black people in them, but the history is unwritten and how to reassert and to find place. And so he began working with Venetian glass companies to make, amongst other things, these mirrors, which are layered Black mirrors in very traditional types, although in traditional types they would not be Black. And he made this series of work that he is still working in that is based on Shakespeare's play Othello, which, if you remember from high school English class, is first of all a tragedy. So it sucks. Everything, I mean, the play doesn't suck, but the things that happen kind of do. Everybody dies, and before they die, there's a lot of trauma that occurs. Othello is a Black North African who has been conscribed to work for Venice. He's an admiral in the Navy, and he falls in love with Desdemona, a white noblewoman, young woman. And everybody gets in the middle of their relationship, thinks, oh, you can't really be in love with each other. Oh, Othello is a brute, he must be because he's Black, or a monster. And in the play, well, in the series, each one of the pieces speaks to a different character in the play. And in this one, I saw Othello's visage in his mind is based on Desdemona's soliloquy. So she's in there in court trying to defend her love. And what she says is, no, I love Othello. I love Othello. I see him as he sees himself, which is to imply that she loves him beyond his Blackness. She loves that it's even possible to love somebody beyond their Blackness, or beyond who they are, their characteristics, what shapes their life. And in this piece, what Fred is bringing, what he is saying, at least I think, is in this complicated mirror, which to go back, our photography team goes through these great strides to take this incredible image that doesn't show the reflection so that you can actually see the object. But I want an incredibly subjective image. I want all the subjectivity. So I went up just now and took an image myself. So that's me. You can see me in there. What this layered mirror does with all of its ornament around, it makes the viewer dark. It's saying, you can't love me beyond my Blackness. You can't love me beyond who I am. I am who I am with all of the things together. And I think that's an important thing. I realized, I was thinking today as I was just kind of running over this talk before I came, that I was thinking about the interstices, where those pieces of glass in the middle are layered. I hadn't really thought about them, but the intersections of our personhood, our identities and our backgrounds. I mean, that is what makes us up. You can't love somebody beyond that. And I noticed when I went to take the piece that when I stand in front of this image, one of those intersections is exactly in my heart. Which I'm sure will give me more to think about of this piece. And then the image on the right, showing a detail of all this ornament of the cut glass. What I think Fred is saying, and certainly what I experienced when I was looking at this piece just even today, is that even though I can think I'm getting lost in the beauty and the intricacies of this piece, this work, that I am still reflected in it. My own self is being imposed on the thing that I'm looking at. And so there's no such thing as loving beyond. You know, we are always loving with, and we are always approaching with, and we need to be conscious of who we are and what we bring to the looking that we're doing, and to the thinking that we're doing, and to the acting that we are doing. I have to breathe. Another artist that is thinking so beautifully about reflection is Anjali Srinivasan, who is working with and is thinking about an ancient Indian architectural form called the Shish Mahal, which are these mirror palaces, incredible mirror palaces made of these convex mirrors. And when she puts them together and makes this framework with these broken mirrors, these convex mirrors, it changes the way you see yourself. It breaks you up. Instead of being this one important monolith as we are in the mirrors that we look in our bathrooms as we're getting ready in the morning, instead of that, you're broken up into infinitesimal parts, and it changes our associations with ourselves and our surroundings. So mirror is an important kind of opacity that shifts how we see and who we are. I'm getting there, you guys. I just had so many artists I wanted to show you. So April Surgeon, I won't talk about too much, but in this cameo cutting, this solid opaque glass, layered opacity, she is also showing us the way that transparency tricks us. She has painstakingly carved through white glass to show blue glass. She has used as her starting place a photograph, and she is showing us the way that the camera lens shifts what we see. It layers and distorts, and our memories layer and distort. And I think it is a pretty incredible thing to see that. Now, opacity also lets us see. This is the last image for opacity, and then we're in the home stretch. So don't worry if it's this. You know, we're almost there. Irwin Aish is one of the pioneers of studio glass, one of the first artists that's really using the material of glass himself in his studio to speak. And he comes from a super glassy family. And I think for this reason, he didn't need to highlight the glassiness of the surface. By making this piece bronze, he's actually drawing our attention to the materiality. Only glass can make this kind of softness. It's kind of like a Klaus Oldenburg, but instead of in fabric, it is in glass. And that twisting of the phone cord, which, you know, brings to mind, I mean, this phone is a kind of phone that I'm not sure my kid would recognize, but that twisted phone cord could only happen in glass. And it is a humor. You know, he is letting us see the humor inherent in the material. And so, okay. So I have shown you one way of approaching glass. You know, lenses are partial, and this one leaves out all these things on the side, and a bunch more. There really are so many ways to see this material. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the other ways that artists are working that I think are really important. Like Irvin Verm, who is in Glasstress and was in New Glass Now and is in the museum's collection, this fun and playful piece. Hot glass in the hot shop, you know, it is a liquid. And when you make a form out of it, it wants to suck back on itself like a droplet of water. And there's something about that rounded edge that is inherently comical. And so it makes sense to use glass in a way that is comical. And I think Mutter, which means mother, and it's a hot water bottle, is hilarious and funny. And I think it's important to make space for hilarity and funny, even though I am still in winter and there's snow all over my backyard. So it's hard to remember that humor and levity can happen. And glass and humor can be used to talk about all sorts of different things. So we have on the top, Megan Stelgis, this shit is bananas. I forgot to say that there might be curse words. And Doris Darling, her super strong lamp in the bottom right. And Deb Teresco, her meat chandelier. And on the right, Monica Bonvincini, whose work is in Glasstress. All of these different kind of feminist takes on the world. Deb Teresco's meat chandelier is a whole bunch of sausages, a commentary on her experience in the glass world over the last several decades. But another thing that my lens leaves out is what happens when you start layering these things on top of each other. So these incredible works by the Korean artist Subin John, Terrazzo and its reinterpretation, use opaque glass with transparent and translucent on top. And the glass is allowed to speak in different ways. It gives us new things to say. It gives us layer and depth when we think about these things in concert. And that is one of the gifts of glass. And like so many things, glass is better sometimes, often, when it is surrounded by other materials, when it's seen in concert with the complexities of contemporary life. And this work by Vanessa German does that, I think, so beautifully. And it combines glass and plaster and wood and textiles and beads. And it speaks very much about what it is to live right now, in particular for Black-bodied people, as she would say. And so, with that, that is what I have. That is the beginning. This is the beginning of what I have to say. Hopefully it's been useful for you in thinking about glass, and it gives you some kind of framework to bring up into your viewing of Glasstress and to go out into the world, or not, to go into your screen and see, to think about the different ways that the material itself is speaking to you, and to think about what things in our world are speaking to us in different ways. Where are we being transparent? Where are we being translucent? And where are we being opaque? And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Susie, thank you so much for taking us on this journey through the world of glass. That was incredible. So we do have a few questions that have come in. So I'm just going to kick that right off. Let's see what we come up with. So we hear from Joan, and she asks, who designed the new contemporary glass museum at Corning?
Thank you. I forgot to do the kind of plugging that I'm supposed to do. That is Tom Pfeiffer, an architect based in New York City, and it is an incredible space, all ceiling lit skylights.
Nice. It looks it. And then another one we have. Somebody asked, I just watched the series Blown Away. Does it represent the hot shop accurately?
Glad you watched. A lot of people have really been enjoying that. I think it does a pretty good job of introducing people to the hot shop. I mean, the thing that I think of most when I think about that show is how short the episodes are and how long the work of glass is. That glass working can really just take, a singular piece can take so much time, and a lot of that time is like back and forth to the hot shop, to the reheating furnace, as Susie
Sure.
Opaque and Karen Donlan would want us to say.
Nice. And then we hear from Bob, and he asks, first he asks, what's the composition of glass? And then he goes right into, why is glass so fragile?
Sorry.
He extends this. Is it because of the tiny voids in the glass itself? And can it be made stronger by vibrating out the voids, by injecting music into the manufacturing process?
Well, I like that idea. I'm reminded that the Roman historian Pliny the Elder wrote about glass and wrote about an unbreakable glass, a glass that you could hammer on that was so hard. And while we don't think that that was a real glass that existed, I would say that my compatriots across the river at Corning Incorporated work pretty hard to make a glass that is not super fragile. So you can drop your iPhone from your pocket and it doesn't break so easily. And then the composition of glass, Well, there are so many different glasses. I used to give a talk that was like the history of the world in 7 glasses and 2 transformational technologies. Because there's like, if you look at the history of glass, like if you look at the history of so many things, there are moments when the raw materials change. Where you are changes the raw materials. But most glass and most of the glass that I showed you and all of the glass that you'll see in Glasstress is called a soda lime glass, and it's made of 3 major components, which is soda ash, which is a modifier, silica, which is sand. And the reason you need a modifier is because if you've ever walked on the beach, you know, your feet burn, but it's not turning into glass. So you need something to help the glass melt at a lower temperature. That's the soda. And then the lime is a calcium that helps the glass not just wash away. So that's the major building blocks.
Thanks. And then we hear, where do you think the most interesting glass is coming from? People that come from glassmaking backgrounds or artists from outside glass?
You know, that's an interesting question that I get a lot. And I think that there is really interesting work happening from both sides. So almost all the artists in Glasstress come from outside of glass. They are contemporary artists that work in a range of practices, like the like Abdul Nasser Gurem's stamp that you saw. And they go to Murano and they work with these incredible artisans to translate their ideas into new materials. Sometimes that means that there's like great freedom in what they're doing. They don't know the rules, so they're making new work in new ways. And people that come from a glassy background, a glassy thinking background, that see their world through that soda lime silica setup. They can say things. They know where the opportunities are, like that vibrating with music. They know where the opportunities are, and they can make things speak in ways that no one else could. So I guess I'll punt on that one and say that I think that there's great work from people inside and out, and that the major thing that makes good work is people feeling free. And so wherever people feel free, you know, is the space.
Now, for a long time, people have advocated for glass to be seen as art. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, so I have heard like a lot of time, for a lot of collectors of glass in particular would talk about wanting glass to be accepted as art. And the way that I think about that is that that's kind of like an assimilationist thing. And, you know, assimilation has its merits, but using my own background as an example, if you assimilate too much, then where are you going to get a good pastrami sandwich, you know? So there still need to be some delis, and enclaves are okay. I think the border should always be inclusive. So obviously, glass is a material that artists can and do use, and there should be permeation between all of those things. But you still need a good sandwich.
Okay, so now, which one has the most meaning for you? Transparency, translucency, or opaque?
That's a really hard question. I think the thing that I think about the most, and in part this is because I worked for many years for an incredible early glass artist named Mark Pizer, whose work you should all look up. He has spent the last several decades thinking about opalescent glass, you know, and that opalescent glass is translucent, and it is so magical. And I think right now, translucence, this like navigating between things, the gray area, is probably what's most interesting to me. But I will say that the part of this talk that was the easiest to put together was transparency, because transparency moves in so many different ways, and there's just so much about it.
Another person asks, what is the best way to stay up on what is happening in contemporary glass?
Oh, I love this question. There's a lot of different ways. You can watch Blown Away. That gives you one input. Hopefully you come and see glass exhibitions like this in your local museums, and you go and look at what work there is. But if you're if you want more interest, New Glass Review is an excellent way. And I'm totally shilling, 100% shilling. You can find it on shops.cmog.org. And there are also a number of great publications. Look around. There's usually a community glass shop in your area, and you can find, you can find artists. Like I should say, I showed you 30 artists in this talk, and 30 artists is just the really tip of the iceberg. There are so many incredible artists whose work I didn't even begin to show you. So there is so much to be explored, and please go do it.
Nice. And we have time for one more. You said that you showed us just a sliver of glass production, and at the end you showed some images of other artists you think are interesting. Who else are you interested in, and what kind of work?
So many people. Actually, I made this whole thing, and I was surprised that folks that weren't included. So Beth Littman is a really incredible artist, and speaking of transparency and memory and like place in the world, she's somebody that I think is super interesting. Norwood Viviano, we're in the middle of installing this major piece by him that's been in the collection for a couple of years, was on view, now off view and on again. I mean, there are literally so many people. Pam Sabroso and Allison Siegel, so many good folks. So I know we're kind of at time, but just go out there and look. I really can't even tell you all the folks.
Very nice. Well, thank you, Susie, for really such an amazing journey through glass. And I think we'll all need to visit Glasstress exhibition again to take a look after getting to hear you talking about it, because I think it'll give us maybe a bigger, different view of everything that we get to see. So thank you for all of that.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Go see Glasstress and then see it again and again.
Okay. So next, I just wanted to say, please consider renewing your museum membership, gifting a membership, or making a donation. You can easily text Boca Muse to 44321 to support programs like this. And remember to check out the events page at bocamuseum.org to sign up for any of our upcoming programs. So we really appreciate you joining us today, and thank you. Thanks for being here.